Something happened inside the Cleveland Browns facility that people still can't fully explain. And no, it wasn't some dramatic press conference or a leaked locker room fight. It was quieter than that. Honestly, that's what made it feel bigger, because the people who were there didn't walk away talking like fans after a preseason game. They talked like professionals who had just watched a plan suddenly become complicated. Coming into OTAs, almost everybody around the league thought they already knew how this quarterback situation was going to unfold. The script felt finished before the first pass was even thrown. Deshaun Watson was supposed to be the established veteran trying to reclaim control of his career, while Shedeur Sanders was viewed as the talented young rookie still learning how fast the NFL really moves. That was the expectation. That was the comfortable version of the story. And then Tuesday morning happened. What started as a routine OTA session reportedly turned into something nobody inside that building expected. Coaches got quieter, scouts stopped casually chatting on the sideline, even defensive players reportedly reacted differently after certain throws. Not because somebody made a lucky play, not because teammates were hyping up a rookie for social media clips. It was the type of reaction that only happens when experienced football people realize they may have underestimated someone. And the strangest part, the moment that changed everything wasn't loud at all. It was a single reaction from a veteran evaluator, a scout who has spent decades training himself not to overreact during spring practices, reportedly watched one throw and slowly nodded. That was it. No celebration, no dramatic speech, just one silent nod from somebody whose entire job depends on staying unemotional. But according to people who were there, that tiny moment said more than words ever could. Because inside NFL buildings, those reactions matter. Teams spend millions trying to identify quarterbacks who can stay calm when chaos starts closing in around them. Coaches study footwork, mechanics, arm angles, processing speed, pocket awareness, leadership, body language. Every tiny detail gets analyzed. And sometimes, after months of meetings, scouting reports, and debates, it only takes a few live reps for people to suddenly question everything they thought they knew. That's why this story has exploded so fast. Now, to be fair, nobody is claiming the Browns have already made a decision. It's still early. OTAs are not playoff football. Veterans still matter. Experience still matters. But reports coming out of Berea suggest something shifted emotionally inside that building after Shedeur Sanders stepped onto the field for his first real NFL installation practice. And once that kind of momentum starts building in an organization, it becomes very difficult to ignore. Because what happened next reportedly forced some people in Cleveland to completely rethink this quarterback competition before it had even officially begun. Before that practice ever started, Cleveland already had a version of reality they were comfortable with. You could feel it in the way analysts talked about the roster, the insiders framed the offseason, even the way fans discussed the quarterback room online. The assumption wasn't subtle. Deshaun Watson was expected to walk into the season as the clear answer. And honestly, from the outside, it made sense. NFL teams do not hand out fully guaranteed franchise-level contracts just to create an open-ended quarterback experiment 2 years later. Organizations protect those investments. Coaches build around them, front offices defend them publicly and privately for as long as possible. Watson still carried the resume of a player who would once look like one of the most dangerous quarterbacks in football. Multiple Pro Bowls, playoff experience, elite arm talent, years of reading NFL defenses at the highest level. Even after everything surrounding his time in Cleveland, there were still people inside league circles who believed the Browns simply needed stability and health for Watson to reclaim control of the position. And throughout the early offseason, reports seemed to reinforce that belief. There had reportedly been strong communication between Watson and the new coaching staff. The Browns were installing a fresh offensive system, and many insiders believe the organization valued Watson's experience inside those meetings. That matters more than fans sometimes realize. In May, coaches care about command. They care about terminology, protections, timing adjustments, pre-snap communication, and whether a quarterback can organize an offense before the ball is even snapped. Veterans usually dominate that part of the process early. That's why most people viewed Shedeur Sanders as a long-term project rather than an immediate threat. Even supporters of Sanders often framed this year as a developmental season. Learn the playbook, adjust to NFL speed, sit behind a veteran, prepare for the future. That was supposed to be the plan. And to be fair, rookies almost never enter these situations without major questions attached to them.
Sanders carried more attention than most rookie quarterbacks before he ever threw a pass. Part of that came from his talent, part of it came from his confidence, and part of it came from the massive spotlight surrounding his family name. Every throw, every interview, every social media clip became part of a larger national conversation. Some fans believed he had been unfairly criticized during the draft process. Others questioned whether his success at Colorado would truly translate against NFL defenses. Reports from draft analysts raised concerns about pocket habits, pressure responses, and how quickly he could process disguised coverages at the professional level. Whether those criticisms were fair or not, they became part of the narrative surrounding him before he ever stepped into the Browns facility. And that narrative mattered. Because inside NFL buildings, expectations quietly shape everything. Coaches may publicly claim every position is an open competition, but human nature still exists. Veterans are trusted first. Proven players receive the benefit of the doubt. Rookies are expected to earn belief slowly, one practice at a time, especially at quarterback, especially in a city desperate for stability. So when Cleveland opened organized team activities, most observers believed they already understood the hierarchy. Watson was the established starter trying to reclaim his form. Sanders was the intriguing rookie trying to prove he belonged. The gap between those two realities seemed enormous. At least, that's what everybody believed before the first real practice reps began. Because once the football was actually snapped, people inside that building reportedly started noticing things they were not prepared for. The first thing people reportedly noticed was not the throws, it was the atmosphere. That sounds strange, but anyone who has spent time around NFL practices understands exactly what that means. OTAs are usually loud in a very artificial way. Coaches yelling instructions, players joking between reps, reporters rushing to tweet every decent completion like it's a playoff highlight. There's normally a kind of forced optimism hanging over everything, because every team in May believes it's about to surprise people. But according to multiple accounts coming out of Berea, this practice reportedly felt different once Shedeur Sanders started getting real reps. The energy reportedly shifted from casual observation to focused attention. People stopped talking as much. That detail matters more than fans realize, because NFL evaluators are trained to ignore hype. They've seen too many training camp stars disappear the second real pressure arrives. They don't usually react emotionally during spring football, especially not to rookies, especially not during installation periods when offenses are still learning basic timing and terminology. And that's exactly why the reactions coming from this practice stood out. Sanders walked into a situation that should have overwhelmed him on paper. New coaching staff, new offensive language, faster defenders, complex coverage disguises. NFL windows that close twice as fast as college ones. Rookie quarterbacks are supposed to hesitate during those first sessions. They're supposed to hold the ball a little too long, miss a rotation, panic against disguised pressure. That's normal. Coaches actually expect mistakes early because the speed adjustment from college to the NFL is brutal. But reports from that practice suggest Sanders didn't look overwhelmed at all. He reportedly looked calm immediately. Not fake calm either, not the kind of confidence players show when everything is scripted perfectly. Witnesses describe something more controlled than that. His footwork reportedly stayed disciplined, his eyes stayed downfield. Even when defensive pressure simulations started collapsing plays around him, he reportedly continued operating inside structure instead of immediately escaping the pocket. That's a massive detail. Young quarterbacks often survive college football by relying on athletic instincts once the first read disappears. The NFL punishes that habit quickly.
Coaches want quarterbacks who can remain patient inside chaos, quarterbacks who trust timing, spacing, and leverage even when defenders start flying toward them. According to people at the practice, Sanders looked unusually comfortable doing exactly that for a rookie on day one. And then there was the completion percentage. Normally, hearing about a quarterback completing over 90% of his passes in OTAs wouldn't mean much. Fans hear stats like that every spring. Most practices are controlled environments with limited contact and simplified concepts. Teams want offenses to build rhythm this time of year. So on the surface, those numbers can sound inflated. But people around this session reportedly kept emphasizing the context instead of the statistic itself. These were not casual throws against air. The Browns' defense was reportedly disguising looks late, compressing throwing lanes, rotating safeties, and actively testing how quickly Sanders could process information after the snap. Coaches wanted to see if the rookie would speed up mentally under pressure. Instead, reports suggest he became sharper as practice continued. And that's when sideline reactions reportedly started changing. At first, people were simply curious. By the middle portion of practice, some evaluators reportedly became noticeably quieter. Certain throws caused players to turn to each other. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. One observer described the atmosphere as the kind of silence that only happens when experienced football people realize they may need to reevaluate a player much sooner than they expected.
That's an important distinction. Nobody was reportedly claiming Sanders had already won the job. This wasn't about coronations or overreactions. It was about expectations being disrupted in real time. The rookie wasn't supposed to look this prepared this quickly. He wasn't supposed to operate with veteran-level composure against NFL defensive movements during his first official installation reps. And then, one specific play reportedly took everything to another level. Because there was a moment during a pressure drill that caused even longtime scouts to react in a way they almost never do publicly. There's apparently one play from that practice that people inside the Browns facility still keep bringing up. Not because it ended in some flashy celebration, not because teammates ran onto the field screaming, but because of how unbelievably calm Shedeur Sanders reportedly looked while everything around him was beginning to collapse. And honestly, this is where the story starts becoming difficult to ignore. The play reportedly happened during a 7-on-7 pressure simulation drill. That's important because these drills are specifically designed to test a quarterback's internal clock. Coaches want to know what happens the second structure disappears. Does the quarterback panic? Does he abandon his mechanics? Does he drift backward and create worse angles? Or can he stay controlled long enough to still deliver the football accurately? Most rookie quarterbacks fail those moments early. Not because they lack talent, but because NFL pressure feels different. Defensive disguises happen faster, passing windows shrink instantly. Your brain has to process movement while bodies close in around you from every direction. That adjustment can take years for some quarterbacks. According to people who watched the drill unfold, Sanders reacted like somebody who had already seen it before. As the pressure reportedly started closing around the pocket, there was a split second where most young quarterbacks would instinctively retreat. That's usually the survival response. Drift backward, escape outside, create space. But instead of bailing out of the play, Sanders reportedly stepped forward directly into the pressure, while keeping his eyes downfield the entire time. That's an advanced quarterback movement, and it's one that NFL coaches obsess over because it requires both confidence and spatial awareness at the exact same moment. Pocket movement is not just athleticism, it's geometry. It's understanding where pressure is coming from without staring at it. Veteran quarterbacks survive in this league because they know how to move 6 inches instead of 6 yards. Reports suggest Sanders showed that instinct naturally. As defenders reportedly collapsed the pocket, he stayed inside the structure of the play instead of abandoning it. His base reportedly became unstable, his body started leaning backward. Everything about the rep physically suggested the safest decision would have been to kill the play and protect the football. Veteran quarterbacks make that decision all the time, and honestly, coaches usually prefer it, because forcing throws late across tight NFL windows can get quarterbacks benched fast. The risk normally outweighs the reward.
especially during OTAs when nobody wants reckless mistakes. But according to witnesses, Sanders trusted the throw anyway. That's the part people can't stop talking about. He reportedly held the ball an extra beat while defenders closed around him, then fired a pass into an impossibly tight window between converging coverage, off balance, falling backward, without ideal mechanics underneath him. And somehow, the ball still reportedly arrived exactly where it needed to be, in stride, on time, and untouched by defenders. One person described the reaction afterwards as almost uncomfortable. Not because people were upset, because they were surprised. There's apparently a specific kind of silence that happens during NFL practices when evaluators see something they weren't prepared for. Conversations stop, players glance sideways at each other, coaches stop correcting details for a second because they're replaying what they just saw in their minds. According to reports, that's exactly what happened after this throw. And then came the moment that may have said more than the throw itself. A longtime scout reportedly turned to another evaluator and gave one slow nod. That was it. No dramatic reaction, no loud praise, just a quiet acknowledgement from someone who has spent decades studying quarterbacks professionally. And if you know anything about NFL scouting culture, you understand how rare that is. Evaluators train themselves not to overreact during spring football because emotion clouds judgment. They've seen too many camp stars disappear once real games begin. Most scouts stay guarded for a reason, which is why this reaction stood out so much, because that nod reportedly didn't look like hype, it looked like recognition. The recognition that a rookie quarterback had just shown a professional-level understanding of pressure, timing, and pocket control much earlier than expected. And once that kind of thought enters a building, it spreads fast. Players notice it. Coaches notice it, front offices notice it. Suddenly, the rookie is no longer just developing. Now, people start wondering how far ahead of schedule he actually is. And the craziest part? According to people there, that wasn't even his most important moment of the day.
What reportedly happened later in practice may have been even more important than the throw itself, because this time it wasn't just scouts reacting, it was the team. And inside NFL buildings, that changes everything. According to people who were there, the moment came during a full team period when Shedeur Sanders lined up and read what initially looked like a dead play before the ball was even snapped. The defense reportedly recognized the concept immediately. A linebacker had already started sinking into the throwing lane. The corner was pressing aggressively outside. The coverage rotation was designed to eliminate the first read almost instantly. Most quarterbacks take the safe option there. That's what coaches usually teach. Hit the check down, live for the next snap, don't force unnecessary throws during practice, especially as a rookie trying to earn trust. Nobody would have criticized Sanders for making the conservative decision, but according to reports, he saw something else developing. Witnesses described him briefly freezing the linebacker with a subtle pause in his delivery, not hesitation, manipulation. There's a huge difference between a quarterback who looks uncertain and one who deliberately controls a defender's eyes for half a second. NFL quarterbacks survive on those tiny details because half a second is all it takes for a passing lane to open and disappear. And apparently, Sanders recognized the opening instantly. Somewhere near the boundary, a receiver had reportedly drifted into a narrow gap between rotating coverage. The window was tiny, the kind of throw most quarterbacks don't even attempt during OTAs because the margin for error is almost non-existent. If the timing is late by even a fraction, it becomes a breakup or worse. Sanders reportedly released it anyway. Flat trajectory, tight spiral, cross-body mechanics. The ball reportedly cut directly through the closing window before defenders could react, and according to observers, the receiver caught it perfectly in stride without breaking momentum. That's when the sideline erupted. Not polite applause, not coaches calmly nodding approval. Reports describe a genuine emotional reaction from offensive players. Teammates reportedly exploded the second the ball arrived because they understood how difficult the throw actually was. And that reaction matters more than statistics ever will. Quarterbacks do not truly earn locker room belief through interviews or draft status. Players respond to proof. They respond to throws that make teammates think, okay, this guy might actually be different. According to witnesses, that's what this moment felt like for some people on the Browns' offense. Because football players know when a quarterback is playing safe, and they definitely know when someone starts making NFL-level throws. What made the moment even more revealing was the reaction from the other side of the ball. Defenders reportedly noticed it too. And if you've ever been around competitive football environments, you know defensive players almost never celebrate offensive success during practice. Most of the time, they're irritated when a quarterback completes anything difficult against them. But reports suggest at least a few Browns defenders reacted differently after this throw. Not angry, not frustrated, more like impressed despite themselves. One observer reportedly described a defender shaking his head slowly after the completion, almost as if he recognized something he wasn't expecting to see from a rookie this early. That's rare, because defenders are usually the hardest people in the building to win over. They attack quarterbacks every day. They see every weakness immediately. They know which throws are lucky and which ones are real. So when defenders start reacting with respect instead of annoyance, coaches pay attention to that very carefully. And this is where the entire mood around the quarterback competition reportedly started changing. Not publicly, not officially, nobody inside the organization was suddenly announcing Sanders as the future. But beneath the surface, something emotional may have shifted. Players reportedly started responding to him differently. Conversations around practice changed. Evaluators who entered the building expecting a routine rookie adjustment period suddenly had new material forcing them to reconsider timelines. Because once teammates start believing in a quarterback, momentum becomes very real inside an NFL locker room. And for Cleveland, that created a much bigger problem than one good OTA session. Because now the organization had to confront a question many people thought was already answered months ago. The reason this story has exploded beyond Cleveland is because it taps directly into one of the most controversial conversations from the entire draft cycle surrounding Shedeur Sanders. Even before he ever stepped onto an NFL practice field, people across the league were already arguing about whether he had been evaluated fairly. And to be completely fair, some of the concerns raised during the draft process were legitimate football questions. Scouts reportedly debated how quickly Sanders processed pressure against elite defensive speed. Some evaluators questioned whether his pocket habits from college would translate cleanly into the NFL. Others wondered how much of his production at Colorado came from volume and freedom within the offense, rather than true pro-style structure. Those are normal discussions that happen around almost every quarterback prospect entering the league. But the deeper the draft process went, the stranger the conversation reportedly became. Because according to many analysts and fans, the gap between Sanders' actual on-field production and the criticism surrounding him started feeling unusually wide. Online debates exploded for months. Some fans believe certain teams became overly focused on personality narratives rather than football traits. Others claim media coverage around Sanders became far more intense because of the spotlight attached to his family name and confidence. Reports and speculation online even suggested some organizations may have viewed the constant attention surrounding him as a potential distraction. Again, none of that was ever officially confirmed by teams themselves. But the conversations were loud enough that many people around football started questioning why a quarterback with Sanders' arm talent, composure, and production was suddenly being discussed differently than expected, especially once other quarterbacks began climbing draft boards ahead of him. And that's why these OTA reactions are creating such a strong emotional response now, because every impressive NFL rep instantly reopens the old debate. The second a rookie quarterback starts making veteran-level throws against professional defenses, fans immediately go back and ask the same question. How did so many teams convince themselves this player wasn't worth the risk? That's exactly what appears to be happening again after reports from Cleveland started circulating. Social media erupted almost immediately.
Fans started posting clips from his college career alongside OTA reports. Draft analysts began revisiting old scouting takes. Comment sections filled with people arguing that Sanders may have been underestimated all along. And once that type of momentum builds online, every single practice suddenly gets examined under a microscope. But here's what makes this even more uncomfortable for teams that passed on him. NFL organizations privately track everything after the draft. Every throw, every preseason rep, every camp report. Front offices constantly compare young quarterbacks around the league because nobody wants to be remembered as the team that ignored a franchise player sitting right in front of them. And while no executive would publicly admit regret this early, it's impossible not to notice how quickly the narrative around Sanders appears to be changing after only one major practice session. Especially because the traits people reportedly questioned during the draft were the exact traits being praised during OTAs. Pocket composure, processing speed, timing, calmness under pressure. Those were supposed to be developmental concerns, yet according to reports from Berea, those may have been the exact areas where Sanders looked strongest. And that's where this story becomes dangerous for the rest of the league. Because if a quarterback starts outperforming expectations immediately, people naturally begin revisiting every previous evaluation connected to him. Scouts rewatch tape, coaches reconsider assumptions, fans become louder, media pressure increases. Suddenly, what looked like a settled draft narrative turns into a possible long-term mistake that follows organizations for years. We've seen this happen before in the NFL. A quarterback gets doubted, teams overthink the evaluation, then all it takes is one strong training camp, one preseason breakout, or one unexpected opportunity for the entire league to start questioning itself in real time. Now, to be clear, nobody knows yet whether Sanders will ultimately become a franchise quarterback. One OTA session does not rewrite history by itself. It's still early. Reports can sometimes become exaggerated this time of year, and there's still a massive difference between looking impressive in spring practices and winning real NFL games under pressure. But what happened in Cleveland reportedly forced people to reconsider something they thought had already been decided. And the most fascinating part is that the Browns themselves may now be stuck between two completely different timelines at quarterback. But as explosive as the reaction around Shedeur Sanders has become, there's another side to this story that people online are starting to ignore too quickly. Because no matter how impressive a rookie looks during OTAs, the reality inside NFL buildings is still far more complicated than social media makes it seem. And that's where Deshaun Watson still matters. A lot. It's easy for fans to get caught up in the excitement of a young quarterback flashing potential in spring practices. That always creates headlines. Hope is powerful in the NFL, especially when it attached to a rookie with confidence, arm talent, and momentum building around his name. But coaches don't evaluate quarterbacks emotionally. They evaluate survival. They evaluate who can still function when games become chaotic in November and every possession starts carrying playoff implications. That's something Watson has already experienced. People can debate where his career currently stands, but what cannot be erased is the fact that he has played meaningful NFL football at the highest level before. He's handled playoff pressure. He's faced hostile stadiums with 70,000 people screaming while defenses disguise pressure seconds before the snap. He understands what it feels like to walk into critical third downs, knowing one mistake changes an entire season. Rookies simply haven't lived through that yet.
And inside meeting rooms, that experience still carries enormous weight. There's also a mental side to quarterbacking that rarely gets discussed publicly during OTA season. Veterans develop survival instincts that younger players usually need years to acquire. Things like recognizing defensive rotations before they happen, understanding blitz tendencies based on alignment subtleties, knowing when to speed up protections at the line, manipulating safeties with eye discipline before the snap even begins. Those details don't always show up during controlled spring practices. That's why organizations are usually very careful not to overreact to May performances, no matter how impressive they look. Coaches know there's a difference between operating cleanly during installation periods and surviving 4 quarters against real NFL defenses once opponents start game planning specifically to expose weaknesses. And to be fair, there are still legitimate questions Sanders hasn't answered yet. How will he respond after throwing his first ugly interception in a stadium full of fans? What happens when defensive coordinators spend an entire week designing pressure packages specifically to confuse him? Can he still remain calm after getting hit repeatedly by starting NFL pass rushers? Those are realities every rookie quarterback eventually faces, and no OTA session can fully prepare someone for that psychological jump. That's why Watson's presence still looms so heavily over this competition. Because for Cleveland, this isn't just about potential, it's about trust. Coaches are responsible for protecting seasons, jobs, and locker rooms. If they believe the veteran gives them the safer chance to win early games while the rookie develops, they'll lean toward experience almost every time. Especially in a division as brutal as the AFC North, where defensive pressure can destroy young quarterbacks quickly. But here's the problem Cleveland may now be facing. Reports from Berea suggest Sanders didn't just look promising, he reportedly looked ahead of schedule. And that changes the emotional math inside the building. A rookie who flashes talent is easy to stash behind a veteran. A rookie who starts making high-level throws consistently during team periods becomes much harder to ignore, especially once teammates start reacting to him differently. Especially once evaluators begin quietly reconsidering previous assumptions. That's when quarterback competitions become dangerous. Because the moment coaches feel a young quarterback might already be capable of handling more responsibility than expected, every future rep suddenly carries more importance. Every preseason drive becomes magnified. Every practice gets analyzed differently. The rookie is no longer being evaluated as someday. Now, people start wondering how soon is too soon. And that's exactly why this next phase of the offseason could completely reshape the Browns' future. Because what happens in controlled practices is one thing. What happens once the lights turn on is something completely different. What makes this entire situation so fascinating is that Cleveland may have entered the offseason believing they were managing a routine quarterback hierarchy, only to discover they accidentally created a real competition. Because after the reports coming out of those OTA sessions, the old storyline no longer feels completely stable. Before practice began, the path seemed simple. Deshaun Watson was the experienced veteran expected to control the offense, while Shedeur Sanders developed quietly in the background. That was the comfortable plan. That was the version of the story most people around the league assumed Cleveland preferred. But now there's uncertainty. And uncertainty at quarterback spreads fast inside NFL organizations. The reason is simple. Coaches can ignore hype. They can ignore social media debates. They can ignore fans screaming for the rookie to play. What they cannot ignore is repeated evidence on the field. If a young quarterback consistently starts outperforming expectations during practices, meetings, and preseason reps, the evaluation naturally changes whether the organization wants it to or not. That's reportedly what may be happening now. Every throw Sanders makes moving forward will likely be viewed through a completely different lens than it was a few weeks ago. Earlier in the offseason, solid rookie performances may have simply been viewed as encouraging development. Now, those same performances carry pressure because people inside the building reportedly know the ceiling might be arriving faster than expected. And that changes everything about training camp. Because training camp is where quarterback competitions become impossible to hide. The intensity rises immediately. Defensive coordinators stop protecting young quarterbacks mentally and start attacking weaknesses aggressively. Practices become more physical. Timing windows shrink even further. Mistakes get punished harder. Coaches begin evaluating situational football instead of isolated highlights. Third and long, red zone execution, 2-minute drills, crowd noise, pressure packages. All the areas where experience traditionally separates veterans from rookies. That's the phase where Cleveland will discover whether this momentum around Sanders is truly sustainable or simply an explosive OTA storyline. But here's the detail that keeps making this situation feel different. According to reports from people around the organization, Sanders didn't just have one flashy moment. He reportedly changed the emotional temperature of the building. Evaluators who arrived expecting patience reportedly left discussing possibility. Teammates who initially viewed him as a rookie reportedly started reacting to him like a legitimate quarterback competitor. And once belief starts forming organically inside a locker room, it becomes incredibly difficult to control, because players always know when someone is earning respect naturally, not through marketing, not through draft status, not through media attention, through football. That's why the next few months could become so uncomfortable for Cleveland's coaching staff. If Watson performs well, the organization can justify sticking with the veteran and allowing Sanders more time to grow. But if Sanders continues stacking impressive practices, flashes during preseason games, and keeps gaining momentum with teammates, the pressure around the depth chart will become impossible to ignore, especially if fans start demanding answers publicly. And remember, quarterback controversies in the NFL are rarely created by one bad veteran performance. They usually begin when teammates quietly start believing the younger player gives them a different kind of energy, a different ceiling, a different future. That's the dangerous part, because once that feeling enters a building, every single rep starts carrying emotional weight far beyond the practice field itself. And for Cleveland, the timing couldn't be more intense. The AFC North is brutal. Expectations around the Browns remain high. Jobs inside NFL organizations are tied directly to quarterback decisions. Coaches do not get unlimited time to figure it out. If there's even a possibility that Sanders is developing faster than anticipated, the pressure to evaluate him honestly becomes enormous. Which means this is no longer just about a rookie having a good practice. It's about whether the Browns accidentally discovered a future they weren't fully prepared to confront yet. And the closer this team gets to preseason football, the harder that question will become to avoid. At the end of all this, the detail people may remember most is still the smallest one. Not the completion percentage, not the sideline reactions, not even the debates surrounding Shedeur Sanders in the Browns' quarterback competition. It was the scout nod. That quiet reaction somehow says more about this entire situation than any headline ever could. Because professional evaluators spend years training themselves not to get emotionally attached to practice performances. They've watched too many young quarterbacks dominate off-season sessions before collapsing once real defenses, real pressure, and real consequences arrived. Scouts survive in this league by staying skeptical, by staying disciplined, by refusing to let one exciting moment cloud their judgment. So when somebody with decades of experience reportedly reacts at all, people notice. And according to everyone who described that moment, the reaction didn't feel forced or dramatic. It felt instinctive, like someone witnessing a quarterback do something that simply looked different. Not perfect, not finished, but different. That's what makes this story so compelling right now. Nobody is claiming Sanders has already become a superstar. Nobody can honestly say one OTA practice guarantees NFL success. Football history is filled with rookies who looked incredible in May and disappeared by November. The league humbles young quarterbacks faster than almost any position in sports. But at the same time, there are moments in evaluations where experienced football people suddenly realize a player may be developing faster than anticipated. And this reportedly felt like one of those moments. Cleveland entered the offseason believing the quarterback story had already been written. The veteran would lead, the rookie would learn quietly in the background. Everything would unfold in a predictable order. But after that practice in Berea, the certainty around that timeline reportedly became much harder to maintain. Because now there's tension. Now there's curiosity. Now every future rep involving Sanders will carry more meaning than it did before. Training camp will matter more, preseason games will feel larger, every throw will be analyzed, every mistake will become a headline, every strong performance will reignite the same conversation all over again. How ready is he really? And honestly, that may be the biggest change of all. Not that Sanders suddenly won the job, not that Watson suddenly lost it, but that the entire emotional balance of the competition reportedly shifted after one morning of football. That's what makes quarterback battles so unpredictable in the NFL. Sometimes organizations spend months trying to control a narrative, only for the field itself to completely rewrite it in a few hours. And if the reports coming out of Cleveland are even close to accurate, that rewriting process may have already started. Now, the only question is how far it's going to go. Because if Sanders keeps building on what people reportedly witnessed during those OTA sessions, the Browns may eventually face the kind of decision they never expected to make this early. And somewhere in the background of all of it, that scout's silent nod still lingers like a warning that the league may have underestimated this young quarterback from the very beginning. So now, I want to hear from you. Do you think Shedeur Sanders is actually capable of taking over the Browns' job this season, or is the hype around these OTA reports getting completely out of control?